This is Bermuda, a lonely rock in the middle of the ocean with no fresh water, no rivers, and almost no natural resources. Completely surrounded by open sea, it faces powerful storms from every direction. And yet, Bermuda is one of the wealthiest places on Earth, home to more than 60,000 people who enjoy one of the highest standards of living anywhere on the planet. Even more remarkable, Bermuda's wealth doesn't come from oil, gold, or minerals. It comes from turning hurricanes, earthquakes, and natural disasters, happening all over the world, into a multi-billion-dollar industry. So how did Bermuda pull that off? When most people hear the word Bermuda, they picture a tropical Caribbean island. In reality, Bermuda is a British overseas territory sitting alone in the North Atlantic, surrounded by such a vast stretch of ocean that there's barely any other land nearby at all. The archipelago is made up of about 7 main islands, plus more than 100 smaller islands and rocky outcrops, yet its total land area comes to just over 50 square kilometers. The nearest mainland is Cape Hatteras on the U.S. East Coast, roughly 1,050 kilometers to the west. But that distance alone doesn't really capture just how remote these islands are. Head straight east from Bermuda, and you'd have to cross more than 4,800 kilometers of open ocean before hitting the coast of Morocco in North Africa. Between those 2 points, there's essentially nothing but seawater, wind, and endless rolling waves all the way to the horizon. No neighboring countries to connect with, no chain of larger islands offering shelter, no roads or bridges leading anywhere else. As a result, Bermuda feels like a tiny speck set apart in the middle of the ocean, where every shipment, every traveler, and every connection to the outside world has to cross an enormous stretch of sea. A lot of people wonder where the name Bermuda even comes from, and why anyone would choose to settle on such an isolated rock in the first place. The answer traces back to 1609, when a violent storm drove the English ship Sea Venture onto the surrounding coral reefs. The survivors made it ashore and were stunned to find the island had no rivers, no lakes, and no natural source of fresh water at all. Nothing but a lonely limestone rock sitting in the middle of the ocean. And yet, it was from that very starting point that one of the great survival and prosperity stories in human history began. Before we go further, we'd love to know what time it is where you're watching this and which country you're joining us from. Let us know in the comments. Now sit back, relax, and join us as we dig into the remarkable geographic story of Bermuda. From the outside, Bermuda looks like a small slice of paradise in the middle of the Atlantic. Crystal clear beaches, that distinctive white rocky coastline. But underneath that peaceful beauty sits a geological journey, unfolding over tens of millions of years. Bermuda isn't a piece of land that simply appeared in the ocean. It's the surviving summit of a massive underwater volcano whose base sits more than 4,300 meters beneath the floor of the North Atlantic, formed by a geological hotspot roughly 30 to 35 million years ago. And as the volcano gradually went dormant, its remaining peak kept getting reshaped by the ocean over an immense span of time. Coral reefs slowly grew around that ancient volcanic base, while shells and marine sediment piled up layer after layer, eventually forming a limestone cap nearly 60 meters thick that now blankets the entire island. But this gift from the ancient sea came with a brutal geographic curse, one capable of ending any attempt at human survival. Made almost entirely of highly porous limestone, Bermuda has no natural source of fresh water whatsoever. And yet, people chose to stay, and together they tamed this lonely rock, turning a land with no natural resources into one of the wealthiest, most luxurious island destinations on Earth. To understand Bermuda's prosperity, you first have to look at the ocean surrounding it. Bermuda sits within the Sargasso Sea, the only sea in the world not enclosed by land, defined instead by 4 massive ocean currents circling around it. The most important of those is the Gulf Stream, carrying warm tropical water northward and keeping Bermuda significantly warmer than other places at the same latitude. Thanks to that advantage, the island supports an extraordinary ecosystem, water so clear that underwater visibility can reach 60 meters, and resilient coral reefs thriving farther north than anywhere else on the planet. But every gift from the ocean comes with a cost. Standing alone in the open Atlantic also puts Bermuda directly in the path of powerful hurricanes, yet those same challenges, combined with the island's tough geological foundation, have only made Bermuda's endurance all the more remarkable. Out in the endless blue of the Atlantic, Bermuda holds stories you won't find almost anywhere else. Horseshoe Bay Beach, one of Bermuda's most iconic spots, is famous for its distinctive pink sand. Many people used to assume that color came from bits of red coral beneath the waves, but the real explanation is far more interesting. That pink hue comes from tiny marine organisms called Homotrema rubrum, which have red shells and live attached to coral reefs. When parrotfish eat these organisms, their hard shells get crushed into tiny fragments that gradually mix into the white sand, producing the soft, pink shade Bermuda's beaches are known for. But Bermuda's unusual world doesn't stop at the surface. more than 300 shipwrecks litter the seafloor around the island, making it one of the world's premier wreck diving destinations. Hidden reefs, combined with Bermuda's location along major shipping lanes, once prevented countless vessels from making it through these waters safely. Today, ships that once represented unfinished voyages have become part of the marine ecosystem, where coral grows and marine life makes its home. And while the ocean preserves Bermuda's history offshore, deep underground the island hides an entirely different world. Inside Crystal Cave, every step takes visitors further from sunlight and deeper into a space shaped by nature's patience. About 30,000 years ago, during the last ice age, rainwater slowly seeped through the limestone, carrying minerals that gradually built the cave's brilliant white stalactites. Today, sparkling crystal formations, ancient stone columns, and a crystal-clear underground lake reflecting the light have turned this place into something that feels lifted straight out of a fairy tale. From a beach colored by microscopic marine organisms, to ships resting beneath the waves, to caves shaped over tens of thousands of years, Bermuda shows that a place's beauty isn't measured by its size, but by the extraordinary stories nature has left behind. In Bermuda, the sea is everywhere, and not a single drop of it is safe to drink. Even digging deep underground turns up nothing but brackish water contaminated by seawater seeping through the porous limestone below. That's the island's great paradox. In the middle of a vast ocean, the resource that matters most for every day, survival isn't seawater. It's the rare drops of fresh water that fall from the sky. There are no rivers crossing the island and no large natural lakes to rely on. Because Bermuda is formed mainly from limestone, rainwater seeps quickly into the ground rather than pooling on the surface the way it does elsewhere. That makes every rainfall in Bermuda genuinely significant. In most of the world, rain is just weather. Here, in the middle of the ocean, every drop that falls is a source of life that has to be captured before it disappears into the ground. Across Bermuda's green hillsides, thousands of white roofs gleam in the sunlight, a sight more striking than any skyscraper. Behind that appearance is a story of adaptation that's quietly shaped island life since its earliest builders. Whenever rain starts falling, thin streams of water run down the roof's stepped limestone layers, follow small carved channels, pass through narrow gaps, and eventually flow into a storage tank hidden beneath every home. In a place where fresh water has always been scarce, every drop becomes a resource preserved right within each household's roof. So essential, in fact, that it's written into building law. Every new home must include a water tank size to match its roof area. This wasn't some modern invention dreamed up in a lab. It's the result of generations quietly observing that they couldn't change the island, only learn to live with it. Even the roof's brilliant white color serves a purpose. The limestone reflects intense sunlight, helping collect cleaner water while keeping the home below cooler, and the weight of the stone itself helps the roof withstand each brutal Atlantic hurricane season. In much of the world, a roof is just where you return after a long day. In Bermuda, it's where the water supply begins, a symbol of ingenuity and proof that people turned one of nature's harshest limitations into the foundation of an entire way of life. As the first light stretches across the white rooftops, Bermuda wakes up to a rhythm found almost nowhere else. No blaring horns, no rush hour crowds, just the gentle sound of waves against limestone shoreline and the scent of sea salt drifting through the narrow roads winding between neighborhoods. On an island this small, even the distance between people feels shorter. A commute to work, a ride to school, or a trip to a familiar shop often takes only a few minutes by bike, short enough to still wave to someone you recognize along the way. Since 1951, each household has only been allowed to own a single car, and visitors aren't permitted to rent private cars at all, a law introduced remarkably early, at a time when most of the world hadn't even considered limiting private vehicles. As a result, the most familiar sound on Bermuda's narrow roads isn't the roar of engines, but the soft hum of scooters weaving between trees, mixed with a ferry horn announcing its arrival as it carries passengers across water so clear and blue it almost looks transparent. In a community where most people have known each other since childhood, a greeting on the street, a quick chat with a familiar shopkeeper, or a hand offered when someone needs help, these things are still so ordinary nobody thinks twice about them, even as many big cities elsewhere have gradually lost that. At the end of the day, once work is done, plenty of people head back to the sea, casting a fishing line, paddling a boat, or simply sitting, quietly watching the horizon they've known since childhood. For Bermudians, the ocean around them has never been a barrier separating them from the world. It's the place holding most of a lifetime's memories. But living on a small island out in the open sea also means accepting real limits. Goods always have to cross the ocean before reaching consumers. The land itself can never expand, and everyone learns to think carefully before using any resource available to them. Looking at Bermuda today, it's hard to imagine this was once an island with almost no obvious path to development anywhere in the vast Atlantic. No fertile farmland, no mineral deposits, no natural resources that could quickly build wealth. But those very limitations pushed Bermudians toward a different path entirely. Instead of treating the ocean as a barrier, they turned the waters around them into a highway connecting them to the world. Sitting between North America and Europe, Bermuda gradually became an important stop along transatlantic shipping routes. Local shipbuilders created the Bermuda sloop, named after their homeland, and built from native cedar, lightweight and rot-resistant, making it faster and more maneuverable than European vessels of the same era. In the 18th century alone, Bermudians built nearly 1,000 of these ships, hauling salt from the Turks Islands and selling it at North American ports for substantial profit. From a place that once seemed isolated in the middle of the ocean, Bermuda gradually became a link connecting continents. But its story didn't end with ships. As the world changed, Bermudians kept searching out new industries suited to their strengths rather than depending on resources nature had never given them. That evolution proves something important. Sometimes prosperity doesn't start with an abundance of resources, but with the ability to recognize the value in what you already have. In Hamilton, Bermuda's capital, no building is allowed to rise taller than the city cathedral's tower, keeping the entire financial district low-rise and painted in the same pastel tones as the rest of the city, just steps from the shoreline. And yet, inside those modest buildings, financial experts sign contracts worth billions of dollars every single day, protecting the world against disasters they've never personally witnessed. Bermuda's real strength doesn't come from anything beneath the ground. It comes from an invisible field entirely, the ability to manage the world's risk. This is the reinsurance industry, the layer of protection behind insurance companies that lets them survive major disasters like powerful hurricanes, natural catastrophes, and global-scale crises. Bermuda's position between North America and Europe, combined with its long maritime history, helped it build credibility and become home to a large number of international insurance firms. Today, this small island accounts for more than a third of the global reinsurance market, supplies more catastrophe reinsurance to American insurers than any other jurisdiction on Earth, and manages assets worth roughly $1.5 trillion. An island that once had to learn to preserve every drop of rainwater just to survive the dry season has become a place that helps the entire world absorb enormous risk, a form of wealth invisible to the naked eye, impossible to dig out of the ground, and yet powerful enough to sustain an entire country. Amid the modern buildings, international companies, and connections to the wider world, Bermuda has held on to something development could never replace: its own identity. Along the island's quiet streets, one of the more distinctive sights visitors run into is Bermudian men wearing an outfit that seems almost impossible to pull off. A dress shirt, tie, and formal blazer paired with knee-length shorts and tall socks. These are Bermuda shorts, which originated in the late 19th century when British military officers stationed on the island asked to have their trousers shortened because of the unbearable heat. By the 1920s, businessmen in Hamilton had adopted the style, and a local tailor later standardized it as proper office attire. Today, Bermuda is one of the few places on Earth where shorts are accepted as formal workwear for men, worn not just by office staff, but by businessmen, government officials, members of parliament, and even Bermuda's premier, regularly seen in Bermuda shorts paired with a dress shirt, blazer, and long socks. What might look like an overly casual outfit has instead become a symbol of elegance and a distinctly Bermudian identity. Beyond fashion, Bermuda also preserves a tradition carrying even deeper meaning: the Gombi dance. When the drums start echoing through the streets, dancers appear in brightly colored costumes and towering peacock feather headdresses, faces hidden behind masks, putting on a performance unlike anything found elsewhere. But behind that vibrant spectacle sits a far heavier history. Gombi was created by enslaved Africans brought to Bermuda as a way to preserve their artistic voice in the face of hardship. The masks weren't originally decorative. They concealed the dancers' identities from slave owners who viewed Gombi as a threat to social order, to the point that at times the dance was only permitted once a year or banned outright. Today, Gombi is no longer hidden. It's become a way for the Bermudian community to openly carry forward the memory and pride of its origins. Development has never stripped this island of what makes it different. Modern offices still stand alongside historic streets, and the same person can spend the day working in international finance, then put on a pair of Bermuda shorts and join the rhythm of the Gombi drums come festival day. Looking at Bermuda today, it's easy to assume this is close to a perfect place. Pink sand beaches, crystal clear blue water, white roofs glowing under the sun, and a thriving economy make it a dream destination for plenty of people. But real limitations sit behind that beauty, ones everyone living here has to face daily. As a small island out in the ocean, Bermuda can't produce everything it needs on its own. Many essential goods have to be shipped in from elsewhere, keeping the cost of living consistently high, from food and everyday necessities to just about everything else, all of it traveling a long distance before it ever reaches the island. Its limited land creates its own set of problems too. Finding room to expand housing, upgrade infrastructure, or build anything at scale is always difficult on an island this small. And the biggest challenge of all, for an island sitting alone in the ocean, comes straight from nature itself. Every hurricane season is a reminder to Bermudians of just how tightly their lives are bound to the shifting sea. Tropical storms bring powerful winds and heavy waves that can disrupt the whole community. Looking ahead, rising sea levels may also become a growing concern for low-lying islands like this one. For people born and raised here, Bermuda has never just been a spot on a map. It's where their memories live. The familiar roads, travel to school every day, the coastline tied to quiet afternoons, the white-roofed homes that have sheltered their families since childhood. Life on this island offers something increasingly rare elsewhere, a real sense of peace. But for them, home was never measured by convenience. A place worth living doesn't have to be free of hardship. It just has to be somewhere people feel they belong. That's why so many Bermudians choose to stay, not because the island is perfect, but because despite every limitation, it still gives them what matters most. The feeling that this, in the middle of the vast Atlantic, is home. Bermuda is only a small island, but beyond the stories of the Bermuda Triangle, the pink sand beaches, and its astonishing wealth, what remains at the end of it all isn't what makes the world curious. It's the story of the people who've chosen to stay connected to this land, because sometimes the value of a place isn't measured by its size or its resources, but by how people love it, protect it, and call it home. That's where our journey through Bermuda comes to an end. Thank you for spending this time with us exploring a small island full of remarkable stories. Subscribe to the channel and keep discovering extraordinary places with us.